Welcome everyone to the Med Spa Accelerator Podcast, brought to you by Everable Marketing, the go-to resource so you can get the latest hacks and best practices to market and grow a profitable medical aesthetics practice. My name is Maripili and I am obsessed with all things business, marketing, operations, numbers, and helping you grow and take your med spa to the next level. This is the Med Spa Accelerator Podcast, Season 2.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's awesome.
Visited the chiropractor and my back. I had been having some back pain.
Yeah.
For everybody listening. You know, carrying a 16-pound baby all day.
17 now.
17. Oh my gosh.
I know. He's huge.
And you can't, a part of that is dealing with back pain.
It takes a toll on you. Yes.
Yeah.
And then now that he's like teething and wants to be like held all the time, it definitely, like I can feel it in my arms.
Say.
It's like a workout.
Yeah, growing them arms. So going on a camping trip next week, so I need to have that back on point.
I know. I'm excited for you.
I know it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't get eaten by bears.
Please don't. Oh my gosh. I don't know how to segue from that to what we're talking about today. So I'm just going to go right into it. Hopefully you're in the next episode. So I guess for anybody listening, if Luis is not in the next episode, we know now why. He's eaten by bears. But no, it's going to be great. So today's episode is actually all about no-shows. And it's a little bit more about like strategies to manage no-shows and what to do when it happens. Yeah. Because let me tell you something, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. And the best thing that you can do is prepare for them. Right?
Yes, exactly. And so in this episode, we're going to be talking about like what to do before to reduce that no-show rate, but also what to do after, like what happens after somebody unfortunately did not show to their appointment.
Yeah, definitely. And so pretty cool. I guess since I was talking about going to the chiropractor, it was actually an interesting situation that happened because I was there in the waiting room. And it's a smaller office. So like the doctor has like his office towards the back and then his front desks obviously in the front. But like the walls are like, you can hear through the walls. The wall wasn't all the way up into the ceiling. Oh, okay. And so he's just like, hey, these guys didn't no-showed. You guys didn't call them back. And like, he was like, he kind of like, I mean, we didn't really like get after them, but like, he kind of just told him like, hey, what's up? Like, you're supposed to call them. You didn't call them because he has it all tracked, which is great. If you're not tracking that, you should be tracking it. And she's like, oh, like, no, I did call them. He's like, well, I don't see the call here. Right. And then I walked in and then he actually asked me what we did. And I started telling him, and then I even told, and I told him like, oh, we actually do consulting too. And I was like, I listened to, obviously I overheard what you were telling your staff, and he's like, yeah, man, it's just super important. You got to make sure, you follow up and stuff. And I'm like, that's awesome, dude. Cause sometimes it's one of the things we struggle with some of our clients.
That is awesome. That's so
yes,
funny.
Definitely follow up. So we're going to be talking about no-shows because, hey man, they happen all the time. Obviously, no one likes it. No. Right? It's the worst thing ever.
It's like being on a date and you
get stood up. Yeah, yes. Definitely. And so...
except this is worse because you're actually paying money for that. And it's your livelihood on the line.
Yes.
Same.
Right. And so, obviously a lot riding on it and super important. But the best thing that you can do is anticipate them and prepare for them. Right? Because they will happen. Hey, people no-show on, doctors no-show on us. Patients will no-show on you, right? It's just part of life, right? And so part of being in business, especially when you're running some kind of cold advertising campaign, right? Like you're advertising to people that don't know you, it's the first time maybe they've been exposed to your brand, right? It's going to happen that people are going to no-show. Yeah. And so the way that we like to think about it is like, what are some of the things that you can do here and there to have incremental increases? Because there really is no such thing as like solving the problem entirely.
Yes.
Right?
A magic solution that will like, this is the one thing that if you do, you'll never have no-shows again. Like, I'm sorry to tell you that's not gonna happen.
Life happens, you know, and so it's part of life and business. And so, interestingly enough, I lost my train of thought.
Perfect. I love when that happens.
Yes.
And I think like one of the first things that we need to do when we're talking about no-shows, I mean, not only like the strategies that we're going to talk about now, but I think a great point that you brought up is tracking. Like if you have no idea.
That was what I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah,
if you have no idea what your no-show rate is right now, start figuring that out.
Yeah.
Like start noticing.
Yeah. And so that's what I was going to say in regards to like when the only, like there isn't one magic solution that will solve it, but there is a multitude of solutions that will improve it, right?
Yes.
Percentage wise. And so, you know, what are some of the things that you can, this is how you should be thinking about it. What are some of the things that you can do to have an incremental increase, right? And so, okay, maybe I implement calling the leads, right? Like calling them, if they confirm their appointment, I would start calling them the day of their appointment. Okay, that's one thing that you did that give you a 1% increase. That gives you a 2% increase, right? And so you want to be doing, it's like stacking little things on top of each other that will give you a 2%, a 3%, a 5%, a 10%. And then that's how you ultimately start increasing that percentage. But the first thing you need to do is, guess what? You need to track it.
Yes.
So super
Start
important.
Tracking it. And if you don't have a software that helps you track with that, make sure to check that out. I know we do, every single client that comes in with us, they are implemented, we add them into the system that we use specifically to track the leads, to follow up with the leads, to ensure that they are being, because this is the other part of it, like too, if there's no such system inside your business where you as a business owner or your office manager, whoever's in charge of that knows like that doctor, the chiropractor was saying, I don't see the call here. Yeah. Or how do you know that your staff is calling or not if there's no way of having that like clear communication and tracking of
there needs to be transparency. And then this is actually something that we've been discussing, is like there needs to be some kind of grading system that's black and white, that your staff knows if they're performing well or not. You know what I mean? Like it's not like subjective to their opinion to your opinion. It's like, hey, it's black and white. You're supposed to call. You like here it shows you didn't call. Now if there's a mistake, well then we can look at it, right? Like systems mess up. You know, it happens, right?
Right.
But more often than not, it's usually a human error.
Yeah, and sometimes and I know we're going a little bit off on a tangent here, but I think it's good to notice these things, because there are things that could be considered subjective. Like I am calling them. Yeah, but you're calling them like this. Hey, this is so-and-so from your practice. Like, what's going, you need to be smiling and doing all these extra things. And also understanding who you're calling and getting them excited about their appointment. And those things might be a little bit more subjective, but thankfully if you have a system where you can actually listen to those calls and have that evaluation with your staff of hey, let's listen to some of these calls and let me tell you what are some of the things that we can improve upon.
100%. Yeah. So definitely all those things need to be in there. Consider using our software if that's something that you are struggling with. Links are somewhere here. So yes. And so, obviously number one, like we were saying, is tracking it. So being able to ensure that you're going to be tracking it and then start implementing things. So what are some of the things that we can do to start anticipating these no-shows and then start preparing for them? Yes.
So the strategies that we can start using are, one of the main things that we like to tell to our clients is how accessible are you making this particular consultation to your customers, to your clients, to your patients, to your consumers. And think about you as a consumer yourself. What do you appreciate? And for example, one of the main things, because we live in this era of I want things fast, I want things easy, I want things at the palm of my hand pretty much. So little things such as, so before the consultation and that appointment, making sure that you are sending them a reminder, obviously via phone, and also via text. But even further than that, what are some of the things that your patient needs to be ready for that appointment? right? So things such as like, I want to make sure that I have a phone number that I can call just in case life happens, traffic, kids, school, work, whatever, and I can't make it. We much rather want to have a cancel/reschedule than a no-show.
For sure.
Because we can keep the conversation going, right, in that case. And so we want to have that accessibility. If you have a system that already like is sending that text and they can two-way text message, that's great. That's you already have that. And then second to that is the address, right? So I want to make sure that like I can pretty quickly click on it. So Google Maps, whatever, takes me to the place. Like I don't want to be also sitting in my car and I'm like, oh my God,
I don't have to be worried. It's like one thing less to worry about. You know, like obviously there's a lot of things, right, that can potentially happen. You're trying to minimize those as much as possible.
Right. Yeah. And even another one too is that like now with a lot of these systems, you can even have a little link that says add to your iCal or to your Google Calendar or whatever. And a lot of us, I run by my calendar. 100%. Like if it's not in my calendar, it's not going to happen. Yeah. I need to add everything in there. And so having that availability of like pretty quickly, just click on it, it'll be in my calendar. It even sends them that reminder. And if you have it all synced up with the location, it'll even tell me like, hey, 15 minutes till you need to travel to go see the doctor or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yeah, it's super important. And I mean, those are the little things that like are super valuable that, you know, a lot of times we don't really take into consideration, but obviously they play a huge role in people showing up to our appointment or not. Right. And so like the way that we've kind of like to think about it all the time is that like, to also increase show rates is like being able to have this relationship or kind of establish this relationship or affinity with the prospect, right? Especially if it's somebody that is new. And I know this is one of the things that we had talked about before, which we really liked from a vendor that actually came to do some work here at our home, where before they showed up to come and do the job, they actually shot us a text message saying like, hey, we're looking forward to our, appointment today. Just so you know, your staff member is going to go and see you is so-and-so. So like they gave us a name. And then they gave us a profile picture of that person. And so very, personable, right? And then a link if we wanted to kind of learn more about him, right? Or her, right? Yeah. And so we're like, that is super cool because like, it's obviously kind of making the business a little bit more down to earth, but I'm also feeling a lot more comfortable with this person that's going to show up to my house, right? Who obviously I have no idea who this guy is, right? But like now, okay, like I've seen his face, especially now because people are coming in with like masks and stuff. So it's hard. It's like, obviously another layer that or barrier that you're trying to overcome. But even things like that, especially when it comes to medical field, like if they're going to be seeing the doctor, they're going to be seeing like a staff member, then like sending out those pictures of like, hey, this is where we are. Hey, or this is where we're located. Like, here's our address, but then maybe here's a little picture of like, the icons.
Park.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh. No, I was going to say where to park.
Where to park. Yeah, that's actually, I wasn't even thinking about that. But yes, parking is a big one, especially if you live in a big city. But then number two, it's like, hey, we're next to the HEB. You know what I mean? Like across the street, or we're next to this other business, right? Those are all like all these little cues that help people identify where you're located, because we've heard a ton of calls where people call in, they're like, hey, like I'm here, but I don't see the building, or I'm lost. Like, is it this highway? Like, is it this exit? Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, where's parking? So all of those things are like super important. And if you can minimize that, like you have to just think about, put yourself in their shoes.
Exactly.
That's it. What would you like?
Yeah, and how can you, not only would you like, but how can you solve their problems even before there's any?
Yes, that's all businesses, 100%. If you can do that, you have a thriving business.
yes, exactly. And it's so huge. It's those little things that not only does it make you stand out from the competition, which is huge, but also it reduces that no-show rate. And I love what you were talking about too, because that's another strategy of like bringing in that report even before that consultation. And so that's why, yes, of course, having a system that texts somebody pretty quickly and doing something a little bit more personable, like what you were talking about, is huge. But at the same time, calling, like there's no other, like, there's nothing else like calling somebody
Yeah.
and making sure that that person that is calling, again, has those same values that you want to transmit to your people, because that first like front desk person is that first voice that they're going to hear, especially if
it's the first
cold
impression.
lead. Right.
Yeah, it's the first, like, let's just say semi-physical, right? Because everything up until this point was digital, right?
Right.
And so beyond that, it's like, okay, them getting a phone call from a staff member is obviously it's like the first impression that they're going to have of your practice. So if I get a phone call and it's just like, hey, I was just calling to confirm your appointment. Like, are you still going to make it? You know what I mean? Like, and all just down, you know what I mean? Like, they're not excited. Where it's like, hey, I'm so glad I got in touch with you. We're so looking forward to seeing you today at 4 p.m. Does that still work for you? Great. We're super excited. You're going to love it here. Like, you know, and then boom, you like, they're just kind of, it's just night and day difference. I mean, actually, we just had an experience where we were looking to do some, we're talking about house projects, but we're actually trying to, you know, tint our windows because Luca, you know, it's too bright, right? And so we're trying to tint our windows. And you had an interesting experience with calling up some of these vendors.
Yes. And so actually, like, of course, you know, like, you do your research, like one does. And I had a few like windows open on my computer. And so I was just calling places to get a few quotes. And so I called one, and the guy that answered was like, hello. Okay, right away I'm like, wait, am I calling somebody's like business, or is this just like a person's phone number, right? So I'm like, hi, is this for the window tinting? They're like, yeah. I'm like, awkward. Okay, so I had to guide that conversation, right?
Yeah.
I was the one that had to ask him, like, okay, well, I'm interested in the residential thing, you know, and tell him all my story. And so, because I had already had previous experience, I knew what I was talking about. But if not, like, I would have been lost, right? Like, he didn't tell me that there were different tintings and what was I like wanting and stuff like that, right? So he even asked me, like, so when do you want me to go by or what? I'm like, well, let me call you back, right?
Sure.
I call the next person, and immediately, night and day difference.
Yeah.
He like, you know, like, responded pretty well with like the name of his business. Like, this is so-and-so talking. So what are you looking for? What are you trying to solve? And so that's when I said, like, this is what I want, blah, blah, blah. I explained everything about Luca, blah, blah, blah. He's like, perfect. Okay, so I can offer you this and this. What I like to do is go to your house so I can show you what it'll look like. And then I will measure the windows. I will let you know. You know, he explained the process, which is another strategy in there of, you know, like me wanting to go with them, because I already don't have to worry about all these things. Yeah,
like he painted a picture of what the process looks like, and like I think us as humans, like we were drawn to that, right? Like we're obviously, it's like one thing like less to stress about, and we know what's gonna happen, right? We want to know what's gonna happen, right? And so like he literally explained the entire process, 1, 2, 3,
and simplified.
Yeah, and so it's like a game plan, right? He gave you a game plan of what would happen, and that actually was really great. And he came to the house, and we'll probably end up going with him.
Yes, I think really we will. Yeah. And it was another difference, right? Of like how he came in, he explained the process. He was also very personable, because I had Luca with me while I was talking, and of course you could hear him. He's like, oh, is that little Luca? Like, he even went above and beyond. He didn't have to. The other guy didn't even notice that the baby was like gooing and eyeing in the, like, next to me. And he did, which again, didn't have to. So that's why having somebody in the front desk that's calling with those characteristics of those people skills, those soft skills, being like human, like, hey, this is a mom that has a problem that wants to solve. And as a mom, I can already like talk about their baby, and it's making them human. Right?
And so again, going back to what we've always said, right? We do business people we know, we like, and we trust.
Yes. Okay. And I like this guy. So he's doing our windows, babe.
Yeah, he's doing our windows. Yeah, he was a cool dude. And so, I mean, super important, right? And so these are all things. And so mind you, right? Like, get inspiration from other businesses. Like, we do this all the time. Like, everything we've developed, I mean, some of it we're like obviously innovating, but like a lot of the things is like, why reinvent the wheel? We already know what works. Let's just establish some of these elements and put them into this industry. And you can learn a lot from other industries. You can implement some of these similarities, because all businesses at the end of the day have the same core functions, right? Yes. Regardless of what service is being provided.
Exactly. So for sure, I mean, making sure that all of these strategies are set in place, right? And for anything that you can do before then. So building a rapport with somebody, with, you know, even the little things that are like, hey, check us out on social media. Or if you have any questions about your upcoming procedure, this is what a consultation will look like. Sending them a link to the blog post or to a video or to a reel that you created.
Testimonials, like what a consultation will look like.
You're getting them excited and building that up for them.
Sending them to the Google reviews, sending them pictures of the doctor, who's going to be treating them, who's sending pictures of the staff, sending pictures of the location, so they already know what the location looks like. That way when they get there, they're like, oh yeah, this is the same building. You know, I'm in the right place, right?
Yes.
So all those things are like super important. Another thing that affects show rates, I'm super passionate about this, is like Google reviews, right? So it's like people will be forced to Google you so they can arrive to your location, right? So it's already like happening. It's a thing.
Yeah.
If your latest review was not a positive one, then I'm not going to show up. Yeah. Like I'm going to change my, now a lot of people most of the time do, you know, like do their research beforehand, but it's specifically from like a lot of the advertising that we do, sometimes not so much because they're driven by this offer, right? And so they don't really see it until they end up going, you know, getting directions for it. And so that being said, like that's plays a huge role and is super important. So you want to make sure that you're continuously getting reviews, because that also will impact the show rate as well. That's
true. All of your internet presence is going to affect that no-show rate. And so making sure that you are here and there. I mean, we've said this before again and again. Sometimes we want to be everywhere, and that is sometimes very impossible to do. So as long as you are like in the places that matter in a good light, like you said, like Google, making sure that your reviews are good, but also choose a social media platform that you're going to be constantly in. I think that is also, that really helps as well. And getting to know them as people, or at least them getting to know you as people, right?
Yeah. 100%. Super important. And then, you know, one of the other ones that you can do in like a text message is like sending out before and after photos. So it's like you're painting the dream outcome, right? You're letting them know like, hey, this is what we've done for other people. This is what we can do for you too. Right? Is this how we build smiles? This is how we, you know, help people have more confidence, like so on and so forth, right? And
this is how, you know, we can transform your body or your face, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, right? For sure. So those are all super important, and those definitely help. Now, sorry.
No, second. Oh, I don't know if you were going to continue to that, but I was going to say second to that. Obviously, like these are all the things that we can do to reduce that no-show rate. But at the same time, hey, it does happen and we know that. So what can we do so that when it happens, it's not as bad, or at least try to recuperate that person? So partly of that, I would say, don't underestimate those no-shows. We know that life happens, an accident, traffic, against school, kids, whatever, right? And so sometimes it's hard to call and say like, hey, I can't make it. But that doesn't mean that maybe they just didn't have time to. Maybe it wasn't the right, you know, time, whatever. So making sure that you have a follow-up sequence for after the no-show, I think it's also key.
Yeah.
It's been proven again and again how many conversations we can go back to and restart. And sometimes they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. Today's been crazy.
Yeah.
Yes. Get me back for like tomorrow at 2.
Yeah. And so, I mean, definitely don't underestimate the no-shows. You always want to try to call them back, get them to reschedule, right? And so there's a protocol that I know one of our client, Dr. Wider, follows. He's one of our coaches. And his whole thing is like, hey, it's like I give people 3 strikes, right? Strike 1, like, yeah, not a big deal. Life happens. Let's get you back on the schedule, right? It happens again, like he'll still get them on the schedule. But at this point, the staff does kind of start telling them like, hey, this is a free consultation, but normally we would charge XYZ. You know, we got to make sure that, you know, like kind of you're trying to get them to evaluate a little bit more. So like kind of just saying like, hey, normally we were charged for this, but the doctor is like, obviously, like if you're like, are you going to show up? You know, like really trying to get them to commit to showing up. And then number 3, like if they show up the 3rd time and they still want to get back on the schedule, then it's like, hey, like they don't really like book them in advance. They kind of just say like, yeah, like you can show up at any day, and then they'll put them there. Like they'll kind of keep her. Yeah, they'll schedule them in as a walk-in, like, right? Or they'll treat them as a walk-in. And that way it's just like, it doesn't take up the doctor's time, or it doesn't take up someone. Yeah, it doesn't take up the space in the calendar. Right. But like, hey, if they just so happen to show up this time, well, you know, they're going to have to wait a little bit. Right. Yeah. And then they'll still be seen. But that's usually how he handles that process. And that's what's really worked for him. And a lot of times that's what we would advise our clients too.
Yeah, definitely. And with some of our other coaches too, they kind of have the same protocol where the second time they kind of start letting them know this used to be this is a free consultation. Normally we would charge this. By the third time, that's when they let them know like, hey, you know what, like we can definitely add you into the calendar, but this is how much it is, which can obviously go towards your treatment, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But it does give you like, hey, you know, you kind of lost your chance on that. Which we understand, life happens, and sometimes it just makes sense, right? Because you don't want to. That's, I think, the biggest fear. And we can go into like, should you be charging, like this controversial topic of like, will having a consultation fee be better for those no-show rates? Will people actually value them, or is it just hindering you from getting more people?
Yeah.
And so we understand that a lot of our practices do have a consultation fee in place. And so this is another great way of kind of like making sure that there's no fear of like, I'm just going to have all these no-shows and then end with nothing. Yeah,
definitely. And so I think, the consultation fees, obviously, like, you know, it can go either or, right? And I think really it just depends on what are you trying to accomplish, right? Because I feel that like a lot of the times, if you have an issue, like if you want to grow, then you need more patients. And so at the end of the day, you need to lower the barrier. Like one of the things that you'll need to do is lower the barrier of entry, right? And so you have to also take into consideration that a lot of people that are advertising the same thing that you're advertising don't have a consultation fee, right?
Yes.
And so at the end of the day, it's like, if you want to compete, if you want to have a competitive advantage, then you probably, like, we always recommend to not have a consultation fee. Now, if it gets to a point where the show rate is just ridiculously low, then we can look at, okay, what are some of the things that we can implement to reduce it? And usually as a last thing, we'll say, okay, well, let's implement a fee there. But you have to also take into consideration, like, where these people are coming from, the context, right?
Yes.
Because, like, if these people don't know you, they have no exposure to you whatsoever, well, then they're not going to want to pay a consultation fee. You know what I mean? Like, and so,
especially for something that they don't know it's going to work for them. Like if they're just exploring their options as to that treatment, particularly, like they don't know if they're going to end up getting it or not. Why should I pay for that?
Yeah. And it's, I mean, and it really just goes back down to like, a lot of the people don't really charge a consultation fee, right? So it's like, how can I justify charging one? Right. Unless you're like some celebrity, you know, like business, and you guys are like
treating Beyonce.
Yeah. then, you know, then like I said, context, right? Every business is different. And, you know, you're not at this point, you're not trying to maybe grow super fast. You're really just trying to bring the right people in. So then, charge a consultation fee, right? But every business is in a different stage, right? A different part of their journey. And so you need to look at your business objectively, right? Take your emotion out of it, because a lot of times it is fueled by emotion. And so is this going to be the best thing for me or not? And I would say, try it, see what happens.
And there's a lot to consider though. Like if you are trying it, you also need to know, like, there is a way of presenting it too. Because if it's just like, oh yes, but you know, like right away, like I need money first, without even giving any value, any context, anything else, then it's just awkward. And
I remember when we first started Everable a few years ago, like we had a client that we were ran their campaign. They started, you know, requesting a deposit. And the lady that was collecting those deposits totally butchered the conversation. It was so bad. And then we showed it to the owner, and they're like, he's like, yeah, like that's pretty bad. We need to solve that. So it's like, it's this whole other piece, like element to this as well, that you have to have on point. Otherwise, well, guess what? No one's gonna book. You know what I mean? Like, and then I think she even did like, well, she was like, no, I'll call later, and then she never called back, right? Like, so
Yeah, and that happens a lot because I mean nowadays people are so hesitant about giving their credit card information over the phone, which I completely understand. I mean, me too. You know, like unless it's an airline or something.
Yeah, for
like a legit business. Like I don't know them, and nowadays everybody has like online, which is another way of going about it. You know, having like an online. Scheduling feature and like getting your deposit through there. That's another option, but definitely we talked about all these other strategies that you can do before. So my recommendation too would be like, let's try all of these first.
Yeah.
Set that up. And if still your no-show rate is terrible, then let's add this other thing. But
for sure.
We just talked about so many other things that you can do before.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, I think those are like, you know, all the things that need to be taken into consideration. But again, like, don't let they kind of stop you from trying whatever you need to try, right? So like, and incrementally increase that while still having the maximum amount of input from, you patients coming in, right? Yeah. And so those are all little things that you can try. I would say last resort, get a deposit, or charge a fee, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's how I would go about it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's really important. Like you said, like the fear of no-shows shouldn't be stopping you from getting advertising from advertising like for like at people that don't know you yet, to getting new people that have never like had this experience or connection with you. So let's make sure that you have strategies before and after. And then let's just play the game.
Yeah. Awesome. So, sorry. Yes, definitely. So thank you, everybody. Hopefully you found this, information insightful. If you have any questions whatsoever, please leave us a comment down below, shoot us an email, join us inside of our Facebook group. We also have a great community there. And we hope to see you in the next episode.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.